Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg, Chapter 6. The ring was gone. The only tangible proof it had ever existed were the blood blisters on my ring finger. The cops must have pried it off while my hands were cuffed and swollen. The ring was gone. I sat in my apartment and stared out of the window. I couldn't tell how long I'd been awake. Justine and Peaches had bailed me out. I recalled they told me there were no charges filed against any of us. Justine wanted to come upstairs with me when I got home, but I was adamant. I wanted to be alone. The first thing I did was take a bath. I put my head back and tried to luxuriate in the tub. Then I noticed the water turning deeper shades of pink and a current of red water between my legs. I instantly recalled the feel of the hard piece of shit against my tongue, and I climbed out of the bathtub in panic, just making it to the toilet in time. Now I was tranquil. I didn't feel much of anything at all, but even through this blessed serenity, I grieved for the ring that would have protected me, or at least offered me its wisdom. The ring was gone. There was nothing to hope for now. The ring was gone. Betty knocked on the door and let herself in. She noticed the plate of fried chicken she brought me last night was untouched. The chicken looked like human limbs, and I couldn't bring myself to bite into the flesh. The thought had sent me flying into the bathroom, retching. "I brought you some apple pie," Betty said. She had bright yellow calico in her hands. "I thought I'd make some curtains for this window, if that's okay." I'd lived without curtains since I'd moved in more than 6 months ago. I nodded. Betty began to sew. From time to time, she glanced up at me. I knew she had probably been sewing in my room for several hours when she stood to iron the curtains, but it seemed like seconds. The curtains were really pretty, but my face wouldn't move, even to smile. Betty came over and sat down near me. "You should eat something," she said. I looked up to acknowledge I'd heard her. She moved toward the door to leave and then stopped. "I know," she said. "You don't think anyone knows. You can't believe anyone would understand. But I do know." I shook my head slowly. She didn't know. Betty knelt down in front of me. As we made eye contact, I felt a sudden jolt of emotional electricity. I saw everything I was feeling in Betty's eyes, as though I were looking at my own reflection. I looked away in horror. Betty nodded and squeezed my knee. "I do know," she said, getting up to leave. "I do understand." I didn't move from the couch. Darkness settled over the room. There was another knock at the door. I wished everyone would go away and leave me alone. Peaches came in, dressed to kill. "My date was a dud," she said, and went into the kitchen. A moment later, she brought out 2 pints of vanilla ice cream with a spoon sticking out of each. She sat down next to me on the couch and offered me one. The ice cream tasted so sweet and cool going down my throat, it made my eyes sting with tears. Peaches stroked my hair. I was thinking about how the world looks when it's buried in deep snowdrifts, every twig and telephone line outlined with inches of snow, sparkling in the moonlight. Silent and still, muffled. That's how the world seemed to me now. I wish I could tell Peaches or Betty how peaceful I felt, but I couldn't speak. "You're afraid to sleep, aren't you, child?" Peaches' voice was so soft. "But Miss Peaches is here with you now. You're going to sleep safe in her arms tonight. I won't let anything hurt you." She disappeared into the bedroom. A moment later, she came out and led me to my bed. She changed the sheets. They were fresh and clean. She put me down like a child and lay next to me. I could taste vomit rise in my throat, but she gently pulled me to her body. My lips found the curve of her breast. "That's hormones made them swell up like that, but they're mine now." She kissed my hair. She sang a song in a voice so satiny smooth that I trusted the sound and followed it right to sleep. Edwin brought over my blue suit coat. She found the matching trousers in a pile by my bedroom door and took them both to the dry cleaners for me. When I didn't show up at the Malibu the next Friday, Ed and Georgetta and Peaches came by and picked me up. Cookie threw me a towel when I arrived and told me to start waiting on tables. I moved in numbness for several weeks, unable to feel the sensation of temperature, hot or cold. The world seemed distant. One night at work, a guy beckoned me over to his table and told me to take his French fries back to the kitchen. He said they were cold. I took them to Cookie, but she said she was too busy. I brought the French fries back to the guy and apologized. He picked up a glass of water and poured its contents all over the French fries. "They're cold," he said. He opened a traveling case, pulled out a huge snake, and coiled it around his neck. and then he bit off a chunk of the water glass and chewed it. "The French fries are cold," he repeated. "Cookie!" I yelled as I skidded into the kitchen. "Give me some hot French fries, and I mean now!" She started to protest. "Now, goddammit! I want them now!" The guy left me a great tip. "You didn't know who that guy was?" Booker doubled over laughing. Everyone chuckled. "That was Razor Man. He performs at a club near here." I threw down my towel. "This job is fucked up." I protested, but even I started to smile. "What's so funny?" Tony said behind me. I turned around to explain, but her face was all twisted up in anger. "I said, what's so goddamn funny?" she demanded. One of the butches tried to pull her back. "Come on, Tony, blow it off." She yanked free and staggered toward me. "You think you're funny?" "What the hell, Tony?" I said, flustered. A group of pros came in the door and I started to walk over to say hello, but Tony spun me around. "You think I don't know what's going on with you and my femme?" Everyone sucked in their breath. I felt stunned. "Tony, what the hell are you talking about? You think I don't know, don't you?" Betty started toward Tony, but Angie, one of the pros who had just walked in, held her back. "Step outside, you chicken shit bastard," Tony spat on the floor. I sure as hell didn't want to fight Tony, so I went outside to talk to her. Everyone followed me out to listen. "Tony," I appealed to her. "Shut up and fight, you fucking bastard. Come on, you chicken shit son of a bitch." "Look, Tony," I said, "if you want to hit me, you go ahead. If it'll make you feel better, I won't stop you. But why would I want to hit you? You helped me out when I needed it. You know damn well I'd never disrespect you or Betty." I caught Betty's eye and she looked at me apologetically. "Don't you be looking at my femme, you motherfucker," Tony sputtered. "Tony, I'm telling you, I wouldn't do anything ever to disrespect you." "Get out of my fucking house," she yelled at me. She was reeling. "Get out." Angie was behind me. "Come on, baby," she tugged on my arm. "It's only going to get worse out here. Come on," she said, pulling me back into the bar. Grant and Edwin offered to help me pack up my stuff and bring it back. "Hell," I told him. "I still only need a couple pillowcases for all my stuff. I can bring it back on the bike." When I got back to the club with my things, I found a stool at the end of the bar and nursed a beer. Angie sat down next to me. "You got a place to stay tonight?" She stubbed out her cigarette. I shook my head. "Look," she patted my arm. "I'm tired. I want to go home and to bed to sleep. You need a place to sack out for the night? Fine. Just don't get any funny ideas." "You've been turning tricks all night?" I asked her. Angie eyed me distrustfully. "Yeah. Then why on earth would I think you were dying for someone to take you home and fuck you?" Angie tossed back her whiskey and laughed. "Come on, baby. I'll buy you breakfast for that one." "Tell me the truth," Angie said as she buttered her toast. "No bullshit. How come you didn't fight her? Was it really 'cause she's your friend, or were you scared?" I shook my head. "She's not like my best friend or anything, but she helped me out a lot. I don't want to hit her, that's all. She was drunk." Angie smirked at me. "So were you fucking around with Betty?" I shook my head. "I don't play that game." She watched my face as she poked her eggs with a fork. "How old are you, baby?" "How old were you when you were my age?" I felt annoyed. She leaned back against the booth. "I guess the streets made us old before our time. Huh, kid?" "I'm not a kid." My voice sounded hard. "I'm sorry." She sounded like she meant it. "You're right. You aren't a kid." I yawned and rubbed my eyes. She laughed. "Am I keeping you up?" Angie glanced over at an older pro who was paying her check at the register. "You know," she told me, "when I was a little girl, I remember being in a restaurant with my mother and stepfather, and I saw a woman who looked something like her." "She's beautiful, isn't she?" I said. Angie looked at me and cocked her head. "You like tough women, don't you, Butch?" I smiled and stabbed my eggs with my fork. "I remember," Angie continued, "my stepfather said, 'Dirty, filthy whore,' right out loud as the woman paid her bill. Everyone in the restaurant heard him say it, but that woman just paid her bill and took a toothpick and walked out real slow, like she never heard him at all. That's going to be me when I grow up," I thought. I nodded. "That's like the time I was about 14 and I saw a he-she." Angie rested her chin on the heel of her hand as she listened. "I'd forgotten about this. My parents dragged me along while they shopped. You know how crowded and loud those stores are before Christmas? All of a sudden, everything got real quiet. Cash registers stopped ringing and nobody moved. Everybody was staring at the jewelry department. There's this couple, a he-she and a femme. All they were doing was looking at rings, you know?" Angie sat back and exhaled slowly. Everyone was glaring at them, The pressure just popped those two women out of the door like clocks. I wanted to run out after them and beg them to take me with them. And all the while I was thinking, oh shit, that's gonna be me. Angie shook her head. It's tough when you see it coming, ain't it? Yeah, I said. It's like driving on a single-lane highway and seeing an 18-wheeler heading right for you. She winced. Come on, she told me. I gotta go get some sleep. Angie's apartment was more like a home than mine had been. I like that kind of material you got for the curtains in the kitchen, I asked her. What do you call that? Muslin, she said. She got 2 bottles out of the refrigerator. Listen, if you need a place, this apartment might be available very, very soon, if you know what I mean. I cocked my head. Like, tomorrow? I never lived any place except for Tony and Betty's. Angie rested her hand on my arm. I'm going to give you a piece of advice. You don't have to take it. Get yourself a factory job so you don't end up spending your whole life in the bars. Life in the Tenderloin's like licking a razor blade. You know what I mean? I'm not saying the plants are heaven or anything, but maybe you can get into a plant with the other butches, pay your bills, settle down with a girl. I shrugged. I know I got some growing up to do. Angie smiled and shook her head. No, baby, I'm talking about starting young. I don't want you to have to grow up too fast. I got old the night I first got busted. I was 13. The cop kept yelling at me to give him a blowjob, and he beat the shit out of me when I didn't. I just didn't know what he meant by a blowjob. It wasn't like I'd never had to do it before. I got up and walked over to the sink. I felt like I was going to throw up. Angie got up and put her hands on my shoulders. I'm sorry. That was a stupid story to tell anybody. I couldn't turn around and face her. Come on, baby. Come sit down. She tugged on me gently. You're okay, she said as she turned me around. Are you okay? I smiled at her, but it wasn't convincing. She ran her fingers through my hair. You're not okay, are you? I was so relieved she said it out loud that I started to cry. She held me against her shoulder and rocked me. She pushed me back against the sink and looked at my face. You want to talk? I shook my head. Okay, she whispered. It's okay. It's just sometimes it's good to talk about that stuff. She held my chin in her hand. I tried to pull my face away, but she wouldn't let me. You know, she said, maybe it's a little bit easier for femmes to talk to each other about this stuff than it is for butches. What do you think? I shrugged my shoulders. I felt trapped and sick. Who hurt you, baby? The cops? She watched my face. Who else? She concluded out loud. Aw, baby, you're already old, too. She crooned as she held me tightly against her. I buried my face in the safety of her neck. Come here, baby. Sit down. She pulled the kitchen chair up next to me. I'm okay, I said. You're not talking to the butches now. Do you open up to your girlfriend? I don't have a girlfriend, I reluctantly admitted. Angie looked surprised, which made me feel flattered. Then she smiled coyly. Have you ever opened up to a girlfriend? I felt like a pinned-down butterfly. She shook her head and looked me in the eye. You never had a girlfriend? I looked down at my lap in embarrassment. How did a good-looking young butch like you ever escape all those hungry femmes out there? She teased me, lifting my chin. How many times you been busted, baby? I shrugged. A couple. She nodded. It gets harder when you know what's coming, doesn't it? I let her see into my eyes. Baby, she sat on my lap. She pulled my face against her breast. Baby, I'm sorry they hurt you. But more than anything, I'm sorry you got no place to go with it. Bring it to me now. It's okay. She held me inside her warmth. Without words, I told her everything I felt. Without saying anything, she let me know she understood. Then my lips brushed against her breast and a sound escaped her throat. We looked at each other, startled. She had a frightened, frozen look on her face, like a deer caught in headlights. That's when I realized sex is very powerful. Angie took a handful of my hair in her fist and pulled my head back slowly. She brought her mouth close to mine until I could feel the warmth of her breath. A grunting sound came from my throat. Angie smiled. She pulled my head back further and ran her fingernails slightly down my throat. I ached from my waist to my knees. She kissed me with her whole mouth. I used to think it was disgusting that adults licked each other's tongues. I figured it might not even be true. But what Angie's tongue was doing to mine set my whole body on fire. I strained to take more of her tongue with mine. Suddenly, she pulled my head back again and looked at me with a strange, wild look on her face. I felt scared, and she must have realized it because she smiled and pulled me closer. My hands kneaded her waist, and my lips found her hardened nipple. Without a word, she stood up and took me by the hand. In her bedroom, she kissed me, pushed me away, looked at me, and kissed me again. Her hand slid down my waist to my crotch, and I pulled away. "You're not packing?" she asked. I didn't know what she meant. "It's okay," she said, going to her dresser drawer. She muttered to herself, "If I don't have a harness in here, I'm going to kill myself." I realized she was looking for a dildo. I couldn't remember anything Al had taught me, not a word. All I remembered was Jacqueline's warning. You could make a woman feel real good with it, or you could make her remember all the ways she's ever been hurt. "What's the matter, baby?" Angie asked. We both looked down at the dildo and the harness in her hands. Angie's face passed through a series of expressions I couldn't read. "It's okay," she said, as I started to turn away. "Come here, baby," she coaxed me. Angie turned me around. "I'll show you how." Those were the most comforting words I ever heard. She went over to the radio and turned the dial until she heard Nat King Cole's silky voice singing Unforgettable. She came into my arms. "Dance with me, baby. You know how to make me feel good. Feel how I'm following you?" She whispered in my ear. "That's what I want you to do for me when we fuck. I want you to slow dance with me. I want you to follow me like I'm following you. Come here." She tossed the dildo aside, lay down on the mattress, and pulled me on top of her. "Listen to the music. Feel how I'm moving. Move with me," she said. I did. She taught me a new dance. When that song ended, another slow song came on, the one from the movie with Humphrey Bogart, Casablanca. When it got to the part where the man sang, "Woman needs man and man must have his mate," we laughed together. Angie rolled me over and began unbuttoning my shirt, leaving my t-shirt on. She got up on her knees and slowly fingered the button on my pants. She slid my pants off but left on my BVDs. I struggled to slip on the harness and the dildo. Angie pushed me back on the pillow and took the rubber cock in both her hands. The way she touched it mesmerized me. "Feel how I'm touching you?" she whispered with a smile. She ran her nails down the side of my t-shirt and up my thighs. Her mouth was very near my cock. "If you're going to fuck me with this," she said, stroking it, "then I want you to feel it. This is an act of sweet imagination." She took the head of the cock in her lips and began to move her mouth up and down the length of it. When she finally spoke, "Now," was all she said. Angie rolled over her back as I fumbled with her clothing. I touched her with an adolescent's lack of grace. At first, I thought she was being very patient about it. Then I wondered if my clumsiness allowed her to be more excited with me than she could have been if I was experienced. When I was fearful or unsure, she became more present in our lovemaking, encouraging me. When I got excited like a colt, she guided me back under control. No amount of advice I'd ever received from the older Butches, however, prepared me for the moment when I knelt between Angie's legs and had no idea of what to do. "Wait," she said, pressing her fingertips against my thighs. "Let me." She gently guided the cock inside of herself. "Wait," she repeated. "Don't push. Be gentle. Let me get used to you inside of me before you move." I carefully lay on top of Angie. After a moment, her body relaxed against me. "Yes," Angie said as I moved with her, following her lead. I found if I tried to think about what I was doing, I lost the rhythm of her body. So I stopped thinking. "Yes," she grew more excited. Angie became wilder in my arms. It scared me. I didn't know what was happening. Suddenly, she started to cry out and yanked my hair. I stopped moving. There was a long pause. Her body slumped beneath me. One of her arms flopped over her head against the pillow in annoyance. "Why did you stop?" she asked quietly. "I thought I was hurting you." "Hurting me?" Her voice rose a bit. "Haven't you ever—" She stopped mid-sentence. "Sweetheart," she said to me, searching my face for the truth. "Have you ever been with a woman before?" So much blood pumped into my face that the room spun around. I turned away from her, but I was still inside her. "Wait," she said, putting her hands firmly on my ass. "Pull out of me gently. Carefully. Okay." Angie got up and slowly brought back a pack of cigarette matches, an ashtray, and a bottle of whiskey. "I'm sorry," she said. I turned away from her. "Listen to me, Jess. I'm sorry. I didn't know you'd never been with a woman before. The first time should be special. It's sort of a big responsibility, you know? Come here, baby." She pulled me against her. I lay quietly in her arms. Billie Holiday was singing on the radio. We both felt how close my mouth was to her breast at the same moment, and something flared between us. Roll over, she told me. I did. Relax. I won't hurt you. She straddled my waist and began to massage my shoulders through my t-shirt. I could feel the strength of the muscles in her thighs. I rolled over and she stayed over me. I reached up for her face and pulled her down to kiss me. She gave me another chance. I did better that time. We held each other for a long time without speaking. Then she left. That, she said, was great. That was really wonderful. It was so nice of her to say that. She guided me out of her slowly and then kissed me all over my face and made me laugh. You're really very sweet, she told me. You know that? I blushed, which made her laugh and kiss me all over my flushed face again. You really are pretty, I told her. She made a face and leaned over for a cigarette. I shook my head. How come you make your living from your looks and you don't know how beautiful you are? That's why, she laughed bitterly. Whatever it is they find attractive, you figure it must be pretty ugly, you know? I didn't, but I nodded. Will you still respect me in the morning? She demanded. Will you marry me? I asked her. We both laughed and hugged each other, but the sad thing is, I think we were each kind of serious. Angie looked at me long and hard. What? I was worried. What? She ran her hands through my hair. I just wish I could make you feel that good. You're stone already, aren't you? I dropped my eyes. She lifted my chin up and looked me in the eyes. Don't be ashamed of being stone with a pro, honey. We're in a stone profession. It's just that you don't have to get stuck in being a stone either. It's okay if you find a femme you can trust in bed and you want to say that you need something or you want to be touched. Do you know what I mean? I shrugged. She kept talking. I remember when I was a little kid, I saw a bunch of the older kids in a circle in the playground. I went over to see what they were doing. I got up on one elbow to listen. There was this big beetle. The kids were poking it with a stick. The bug just kind of curled up to protect itself. She snorted. God knows I've been poked with enough sticks. I kissed her on the forehead. God, she said, by the time we're old enough to have sex, we're already too ashamed to be touched. Ain't that a crime? I shrugged. Will you trust me a little? She asked. I tensed. I won't touch you any place you've been hurt. I promise. Turn over, baby, she whispered. She lifted the back of my t-shirt. God, your back looks like a raw hamburger. Did I do that to you? I laughed. God, it's bleeding a little. Did I hurt you? I shook my head. What a butch, she said. Angie's hands rubbed all the soreness out of my shoulders and lower back. She slid her nails down my back and sides, and soon her mouth followed the same trail. I clenched the pillowcase in my fists. I knew it pleased her that I writhed under her touch. As her hands ran up my thigh, I froze. I'm sorry, baby. It's okay, she reassured me. I rolled over and she came into my arms. Usually it's me that reacts like that, she said. It's strange. It's like being on the other side of the looking glass, you know? I didn't, but I could feel myself drift irresistibly towards sleep. Sleep now, baby, she cooed in my ear. You're safe here. Angie, I asked her as I slipped into sleep. Will you be here when I wake up? Sleep now, baby, she answered.